Excellent. So good morning. Hello and good morning, everybody. My name is Anthony Field, and I am the Chesapeake Climate Action Network's No New Fossil Fuels campaign lead. Before we get started, I do want to ask that if you are not speaking, please go ahead and keep both your mic and your video off. Also, this event will be both video and audio recorded, so keep that in mind. So again, thank you for coming. Today, we're calling on the Maryland Board of Public Works to reject the Eastern Shore Pipeline projects, one of which is due for a vote as early as November 4th, yes, the day after election. Leading research warns that fracked gas is just as bad, if not worse, than coal over a 20-year time frame. Between the threats to our air quality, land, water, community health, and the danger of explosions, like we saw just a few months ago in Baltimore and just last year in Columbia, Maryland, we know that gas is not the future. While states across the country are moving away from gas, Maryland put its thumb on the scale for gas, foregoing the opportunity for a comprehensive review of alternatives. We know that the Eastern Shore, which is essentially surrounded by water, is ground zero for climate change in Maryland. We also know that the expansion of dangerous gas infrastructure like this is a major step in the wrong direction. The upcoming Board of Public Works votes are an opportunity for the board to correct an injustice, allowing communities a fair review of alternatives while also moving towards our state's climate commitments and commitment to climate action. Today, we have a number of members from the community to share more about the impacts these pipelines will have on them as individuals, but also the shore that they call home. So I would like to go ahead and introduce Jalen Britt first. So Jalen is a junior at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. She's majoring in agriculture with a concentration in agricultural studies. She's also the vice president of minorities in agriculture, natural resources, and related sciences. Additionally, she is a member of UMES's NAACP chapter and is UMES's delegate for the Maryland Public Interest Research Group. Jalen, if you could go ahead and unmute your mic and video, and you are good to go.
Hi, my name is Jalen Britt, and only a few years ago, a survey ranked the University of Maryland Eastern Shore as one of the top HBCUs in the country as an energy-efficient campus promoting sustainability through their policies, practices, and curriculums. This is why I'm concerned by UMES's support of the Eastern Shore pipeline projects and the planned use of fracked gas on my campus. Fracked gas is a non-renewable source of energy that brings a variety of concerns to the campus and the shore. The process of extracting fracked gas itself threatens the air quality, which puts workers and people in the area at risk for respiratory issues and irritants. We should want to avoid this, especially now with flu season, allergy season, and COVID-19. The process also endangers nearby soil and water, and these are the reasons why Maryland banned fracking. Since the ban, Maryland Environmental Service has presented 4 gas projects and 0 renewable project contracts. MES is a state agency that provides operational and technical services to protect and enhance the environment. Among its work, it facilitates contracts for services such as the gas pipeline. In this case, however, as in all other contracts it's secured since Maryland banned fracking, it only requested applications for gas projects to repower UMES. Electric can be powered by renewable energy, geothermal, and other alternatives. They were given no consideration. What this means is that we don't know how alternatives can compare. They weren't even given a chance. This is damaging to an already vulnerable community, and I see it as a grave injustice. A pipeline would bring many issues to the UMES and the shore. There are water sources on campus that are home to geese and fish, and students actively fish there. But because of how the soil is in this area, which is majority sand and silt, not bedrock, this puts this area in even more risk because whatever chemicals come up from the pipes will surely be present on the soil surface and in the water. The soil here already is heavily saturated and will not be able to hold large amounts of water. UMES is an 1890 land-grant institution that prides itself on the agriculture research students like me can do. The array of studies conducted on this campus require clean, fresh water for the animals on the local farm and the plants grown here, such as soybeans. Other research on this campus, such as water quality and soil sampling, requires untampered and unaffected water and soil to obtain helpful and accurate results. If there is now a human-made change in the environment, this affects years' worth of research and data and people's education. This pipeline provides no sustainable benefits to the school. This university is an actual representation of what sustainability looks like. A small building in 1886 with almost 36 students is now a 5-school campus with thousands of students. We want to continue this legacy for future students, but we cannot if the local land and climate is damaged from an input of an ineffective pipeline. We cannot continue our agricultural legacy if the animals and plant research conducted here is hurt because of the construction and release of toxic chemicals from a pipeline. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jalen, for joining us today. Let me go ahead and fix the video here. So to expand a little bit on the community impacts of these pipeline projects and highlight the fact that it's not specifically limited to the UMES campus, a new spatial analysis conducted by Stephen Metz, who is a GIS analyst and an instructor at the New School, a university in New York City, showed that the project and the construction of these pipelines runs through primarily majority, minority, and low-income communities. The top line finding is that there is a predominance of environmental justice eligible census block groups up and down the two proposed projects. Specifically, an environmental justice area or census tract is where 20% or more individuals live in poverty and or 30% or more of the population is minority. There are only 4 of 40 1-mile study area tracts that are not EJ eligible. That is a significant concern to many on the Eastern Shore and me in particular. Additionally, there is a particular high risk at the head of the Del Mar project in the city of Salisbury, which is where the developers are planning to site a new, quote, renewable natural gas facility, unquote, using waste from livestock, which is associated with a host of additional health threats. So it is worth keeping in mind the immediate and large environmental justice impacts that these pipeline projects will have. Next, I would like to go ahead and introduce Susan Olson. Susan is the chair of the Sierra Club's Lower Eastern Shore group. Susan, you are good to go.
Okay. Good morning. Water is essential to human life all over the world, but here in Maryland, it's an especially important part of our culture and economy. We're known for training sailors at the Naval Academy, providing harbor to centuries of ships, and of course, our famous crab cakes. The identity and prosperity of Maryland are intertwined with the health and quality of our water. That's especially true and apparent here on the Eastern Shore, where our tourism industry depends on clean water. Whether people are fishing, swimming, sailing, crabbing, or just relaxing on the beach, our economy depends on clean water. Agriculture is another vital industry. Now that we are experiencing unprecedented flooding from sea level rise and heavy rain, we must consider those factors when building a pipeline. Flooding can interfere in the construction of a pipeline, causing spills of toxic drilling fluids to run off on backyards and agricultural land. Once the pipeline is created, flooding can make the ground shift and swell, causing the pipes to leak dangerous greenhouse gases such as methane. Tourism and agriculture are two major industries vital to the financial health of the Eastern Shore. Clearly, preserving the health and prosperity of the Eastern Shore depends on protecting the health and quality of its water. It makes no sense then to put all that at risk for dirty, dangerous, and unnecessary fracked gas pipelines. Not only will construction of these proposed pipelines threaten our water with erosion, pollution, and drilling fluid spills, but the fracked gas they would carry is a major contributor to the climate crisis. Methane, the primary component of fracked gas, is a greenhouse gas 87 times more potent than carbon dioxide. It remains in the atmosphere for 12 to 20 years. In other words, it makes climate change worse faster. We're already seeing the effects of the climate change here in the form of more severe flooding, stronger hurricanes, and rising sea levels eating away at our precious coastline. Why then would we want to double down on frack gas by building pipelines that lock us into decades of dependence on such a dirty fuel source? In fact, 67% of Marylanders want our state to get its energy exclusively from renewables instead of pumping in fracked gas from out of state. Maryland banned fracking in 2017 and spiked the fracked gas Potomac pipeline last year. There's no reason to go backward now. At a time when clean, renewable energy is affordable and abundant, we shouldn't be building dirty, dangerous frack gas pipelines. Our state should reject the Eastern Shore frack gas pipelines. The health of Maryland's water, economy, and people depend on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susan. Thank you for being here. John, I know you are having issues with your video. Are you on the phone at the moment? John, if you are on phone, you are muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, John.
I apologize.
No, it's okay. Yeah, so I'd like to go ahead and hand it over to John Grout, a member of the Wacomico Environmental Trust. Go ahead, John.
Thanks, Andy. The world's leading climate scientists warn that we have 10 short years to move away from fossil fuels, or we will live on a planet that we see with horror almost daily on our TV news. Most of the world is no longer investing in fossil fuels, including gas, but instead moving to clean, renewable energy from solar and wind. These do not leave us with a dangerously hotter planet, rising floodwaters, not polluted air and water, and here on the Eastern Shore, newly created ghost forests and unproductive farmland due to salt-laden seawater from the increasing regular flooding caused by the climate increases, temperature increases. Today, the Washington Post today reports that, and I quote, recent unexpectedly rapid technological improvements in renewables and battery technology has made clear that fossil fuels will eventually get phased out no matter what government does. Still quoting, the only question is whether political leaders speed this process or slow it down, and whether they help workers displaced by the inevitable change, end of quote. Unfortunately, Governor Hogan wants to kickstart a gas pipeline expansion across Maryland and has already spent $500,000 of taxpayers' money as a down payment. If we build the pipeline projects, we're moving backwards and spending money on stranded assets. The pipeline and gas burning equipment, which will be abandoned within less than one generation abandoned, will join the abandoned rail tracks that once carried freight cars with seafood from Crisfield north to New York. Our heirs will question our short-sightedness when we knew about, without doubt, it was already obsolete before we went ahead and built it. If you doubt this, the markets have already spoken. Chesapeake Utilities, the company that was awarded the Delmarva pipeline contract, filed for bankruptcy in June. Maryland taxpayers will pay the losses since the contract company has protected itself by declaring bankruptcy. The reporter that I quoted earlier in today's Washington Post writes again, quote, the energy industry has changed dramatically while no one was looking. Solar, wind, and battery technology got a lot cheaper, a lot faster than almost anyone forecast, and renewable energy sources have grown increasingly competitive with fossil fuels. Solar projects now offer some of the lowest cost electricity ever seen. The main reason prices have fallen so fast is that technology has improved so much. A final note, is that it is estimated that solar and offshore wind resources will create approximately 24,000 jobs by the year 2030. The contrast between gas and renewables is stark. It raises the question why anyone would want to invest in gas at the present time. And thanks.
Sorry, I was muted there. Thank you so much, Sean. I appreciate you being here as well. So the concerns discussed today are a danger to the shore, the state, and the climate, but more immediately, we know it endangers local communities most immediately and most directly. That is why all of us here today, all of the speakers on this call and the various organizations they represent, including more than 30 organizations and businesses and hundreds of Marylanders by way of sign-on letters, petitions, and phone calls. All of us urge Treasurer Kopp, Comptroller Francho, and Governor Hogan to vote no on approving these pipeline projects. Thank you very much to all of our speakers. I would like to go ahead and allow a few minutes here. It looks like we still have a few minutes to give members of the press an opportunity to ask questions to any of our speakers. If you have any questions, you can please email them. If you would please email them to info@chesapeakeclimate.org. That way, whatever questions we cannot get to on this call, we can follow up with via email or phone calls. And I'll go ahead and put that email address in the chat as well.
I think we should clarify. I think it's also okay if reporters want to ask questions on the air, and to do so, simply raise your hand and we can do that way. But I did have some questions emailed to me from a couple of reporters who couldn't make it already in the info@account. So let me start with that. The first question: why would the Hogan administration have overlooked the environmental justice impacts of the project?
Thank you, Denise. There's some like muffled bumping noises coming from your end of the mic. If you wouldn't mind repeating that.
Sorry about that. Is this better?
Much better, thank you.
Why would the Hogan administration have overlooked the environmental justice impacts of the project?
Yeah, and so I can go ahead and start with this, but if any of the other speakers would like to weigh in as well, I invite you to do so. But what I'll say is that by and large, environmental justice impacts are either overlooked or excused as outweighed by other potential benefits. What we see is that often this gas infrastructure or even other infrastructure such as incinerators or landfills or coal plants or what have you are more often than not constructed and operated within minority communities or low income communities. A lot of folks, coined the term sacrifice zones, essentially sacrificing the health and well-being of these communities in order to have this infrastructure out of other areas of the state or other neighborhoods. Another thing I would say is that Maryland currently does not have very strong laws on the books requiring a full environmental justice analysis when looking at the siting and construction of these various forms of infrastructure. So I think it's a combination of lack of concern, but also the fact that there aren't full, strong laws on the books.
Thank you. Another question in the queue. What is the likelihood that the Board of Public Works will make a decision on November 4th? And does the timing of the election complicate this decision?
Yeah, so I think your question was, what is the possibility of it being on November 4th in terms of the BPW vote? And does that complicate things? I apologize. There was some bumping again I don't know if that's just on my end, but so yeah, to answer that question, we've heard from Board of Public Works staff that the most likely soonest vote for the Delmar pipeline project, which is one of the two pipeline projects, would be November 4th or November 18th. Now, we won't know for certain if it will be on the 4th until this Friday when the Board of Public Works agenda is officially released. But we do know that it is a possibility to be as soon as November 4th. And I think, you know, it's an issue of getting enough kind of attention to this issue being so soon after the election, and who knows, what the results of the election will even be decided by then. So there will be some significant work in, making sure the community and, members that will be affected by this project specifically are notified and aware of the issue and, are able to attend, listen in, or kind of know the results of that hearing specifically. So I would just say, it poses the difficulty of trying to get over the noise of the election, I should say.
Thank you. Sorry about the audio. I've switched to my phone, so hopefully this is better. And just a reminder for reporters, if you'd like to ask a question on the air, you should see a raise hand button in the participants section. Or if you've dialed in by phone, you can simply dial *9 on your phone's dial pad to raise your hand that way. But in the meantime, another question in the queue. Does the Maryland Department of Environment's prior approval of the project tip the scales?
Yeah, I would be happy to answer this one as well. So on July 7th, MDE did hold a wetland license hearing specifically for the Delmar pipeline, which is going to be the first pipeline voted on by the Board of Public Works. They did recommend approval of the wetland license to the BPW. Though, as with comments, letters, and input from legislators, the community, and others, the Board of Public Works members take all of that into consideration. And I think it's worth noting that the scope of the MDE recommendation is very limited. It's limited specifically to water quality impacts alone and does not necessarily bring in to consideration the whole picture, such as the request for a proposal process where only gas applicants or only a gas applicant was reviewed and alternatives weren't given a chance. The environmental justice implications, such as the study that I just pointed to you earlier on this call, or generally just taking into consideration other alternatives. So I would say it's definitely something that the Board of Public Works will consider, but it's only part of a larger picture.
Thank you. Last question that I have in the queue. What alternatives for energy in the area are the most economically viable?
Yeah, and again, I'm going to invite other speakers on this call to weigh in if they would like. I'm going to pause for a moment and give anybody else an opportunity to speak if they would like to that question.
Perhaps this is a good question for John, if he's still there.
John, if you are still on, dialed in, you are currently muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So there's another question?
Yeah, Denise, would you mind repeating the question?
Yes, the question is, what alternatives for energy in the area are the most economically viable?
Well, what alternatives, either solar or wind are getting much cheaper, and they're economically viable. I recommend that report in today's Washington Post, which really said so much better than I can say it. The reporter wrote about. But either one of those are becoming far more competitive financially than gas or the others, which are going to be out of in 10 years they're gone. Plus the methane, which Susan mentioned, is just doing horrendous damage in terms of global heating and the flooding that is affecting the Eastern Shore. We're the third most vulnerable area in the country for sea level rise and flooding, and we're seeing it all the time now in Salisbury and in the local areas on sunny days when there's no rain. But the higher tides, with the way that it's changing the current in the ocean, which is pushing water inward, sinking the land on the Eastern Shore, which is due to the way the geological less glacier age left us, are all making us very, very vulnerable. So either one of solar or the renewables are far more economically viable right now.
I'd like to add something to that. There's a lot that's been going on with geothermal energy. In fact, there's going to be a bill in the legislature this time around and about geothermal energy. That's cheaper, and the electrification of buildings with heat pumps is becoming very popular. So all of them are cheaper.
Great. Yeah, thank you. And the final thing I'll say on that is that the question of economic viability could have easily been reviewed by the state and other renewable energy providers had they allowed that to happen. Again, through this proposal process, only gas applicants were requested and only one gas application was reviewed. What I can say is that frac gas infrastructure and their parent companies are part of a faltering industry as a whole. For example, companies behind the Atlantic Coast Pipeline canceled the project due to ballooning costs and legal uncertainties. The Dakota Access Pipeline was shut down for an environmental review. And in late June, the fracking company Chesapeake Energy actually filed for bankruptcy. So these are all setbacks for the industry that demonstrate fracking as a risky investment, not only for the climate, for the environment, but also for the economy, especially the local economies that they would be supporting. So with that in mind, I again just want to reiterate what both Susan and John just said, that there are renewable alternatives that are increasingly becoming cheaper and more efficient while providing good paying, sustainable, and clean and green jobs. And those alternatives could look like electrification through solar, wind, and geothermal. Are there any more questions in the queue, Denise?
No more questions, so I think we can wrap it up.
Okay. Excellent. Well, again, thank you to all our speakers and to the members of the press here. I would like to mention that everybody will receive a press release with the analysis in their inboxes shortly.